Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 299. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is Thursday the 26th of October 2023. As I said, thank you for being here. We're talking issues here in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a Thursday, so you know a Thursday. We do Thursday talks, no direct topic necessarily. I mean, there's always news in the news, but we're talking about whatever topic jumps up inside of the live. Whoever wants to join the discussion, feel free to do exactly that, and we will be discussing whatever topics you all come up with there, and what topics are suggested in the live, as well as whatever I think to jump in over on the news. That's going to happen too, nonetheless. So, good night, people. Thank you for being here. Hit that like button if you have not yet hit it. If you have hit it, you could hit it again just by the way over on TikTok and Instagram. Double tap the screen over there on TikTok. Double tap that screen. 2 times you hit that screen and you get that like button going. And if you're viewing this on repeat over on YouTube, hit that like button. Also drop a comment, tell me what you think. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring, over there on YouTube, and catch most of these lives. If you miss anything, you can catch it on repeat over there also. My sister graduated today with her law degree. Congratulations to Sister of Candy Cane. Big up your whole self. I saw Italy said they in a crisis. No new births in the last 3 months. Yep.
That's a man.
That's what Mr. Elon Musk has been talking about. You know, there are many people out there who are anti-natalist and talking about, you know, the world is full and we can't have any more babies. We are overpopulated, etc., etc., etc. But there are some very smart people out there who are like, that's not exactly true. And especially considering that if you have no babies, the population collapses in a generation. So overpopulation isn't just a factor of general babies being had, but how much babies each person has to replace themselves also. They need some Trinidadian men. I don't know how true that is, but I saw that too. They need some Trinidadian men. I don't even know, because it's not even like Trinidad birth rate is out there up in the moon either way.
No, you're not even making 3 plays. But good night, everybody. As I said, I had the answer. The cannot be the mother granddaughters. Total. That is disrespectful.
Yeah, it is. I think so.
If I was a single mother who needed that, I wasn't even applying for that because I am calling myself needy. That's dumb. But anyway, beside that, for me, I understand and I agree. To make a child now is very difficult, right? I mean, to maintain a child now is kind of hard. When you're working, the average salary is like $6,000-$7,000, but I do for non-professionals. For professionals, like $10,000.
Ronnie, to be honest with you, as I said, I think that raising a child and the salary is hard is a psyop. I am telling you all, it's a psyop.
No.
It is not. Let me tell you what is hard. What is hard is keeping up with the Joneses. With the $7,000 salary. It's not hard raising a healthy, all-rounded child on the $7,000 salary. That isn't hard. What is hard is keeping up the appearances with the Joneses. So ensuring that the child has the newest Crocs, ensuring that they have pull-up diapers instead of a pin-up diaper, ensuring that they're using all of the latest cereals and stuff. That could cost you a couple $1,000s extra per month. But if you're talking just about having a happy, healthy baby, it does not honestly cost you that much.
Come on, don't go there. No. I'm not saying. For me personally, of course, I do not believe in buying as such as shipping as for your children. I often listen to the ladies in my office who would talk about how difficult it is for them with their children, and when you look, they're living in a full everywhere in the house is the child must eat some kind of friggin' protein cereal. Like, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about basic. If you the thing about these kind of the mentality of, you could use pin-up diapers. Listen, if your child in daycare, you can't use no pin-up diapers. Because nobody in daycare is going to be washing any of your diapers, right?
Well, if your child in daycare, that means you're working whole day.
Yeah, you're working, but if you're working past that salary,
well, then stop working and mind your child. It will be cheaper.
I have said that. I agree. It would be cheaper if you leave some public servants, if they left.
Bruh, there were people of old. There were people of old, and I'm not even saying you have to do this. But you know, you could have a child naked all day, and you take care of them if you're home. It's not even that difficult because you are home.
Understand, and I agree.
A lot of the things, a lot of the expenses come because you're leaving your home, and then to me, you have to do an opportunity cost evaluation. Then you have to see, okay, I'm leaving my home for a job that is paying me $180 a day. Is that $180 a day sufficient to repay for all that I could do on my own if I have my child home with myself? If it's not sufficient to repay it, then the job doesn't pay you enough to take you away from your home. The reality is, a lot of people, especially women in this case, and you know we regularly discuss this, many women in modern times bought into the psyop where they sold out themselves as a homemaker, as a home builder. They sold out themselves for a cheaper cost than they are valued at. The cost of the value of you cooking for your family, maintaining your children while being at home, teaching your children, get a price cost for that. Like, imagine if you had to pay someone to do what you could do for your children all day. How much would you have to pay them? And then, is the salary you're making to drag you out from your home to go wherever you're going, is it covering that cost? If it's not covering that cost, then you're actually working at a loss. At a loss, not a loss, at a loss.
We had the whole stay-at-home discussion. I did this, I agree with what you're saying. I agree with everything you're saying. The problem is, plenty of these women are not married, so they don't even have a husband to say, well, we could cut down certain expenses. You alone work, I got my return, and we're gonna make do with what you have. Plenty of them don't have that, and that is the problem. That's where it starts. What I always say.
Exactly. And here's the thing, Ronnie, and I've heard this argument regularly made in the United States because their argument follows the statistics of the black community, where the black community fatherless homes were a rare thing in the black community in the 20s and 30s when they were under more oppression. But when laws like what we're talking about here came out, laws to help the poor mothers, help the mothers who, the mothers who ended up pregnant without a father. The laws came out to help them. And instead of just helping those who fell through the cracks, it incentivized more people to go jumping through the cracks. That's what it did. Yeah. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to incentivize people by making bad choices no longer have bad consequences. It's not like you want to make the consequences be unbearable, but you allow people to understand there are negative consequences to negative choices. But yeah.
Let me finish asking. I understand it is difficult, and to me, all you know how it will go. I think if you're going to give anybody a grant, it should be married people who struggling with the children. If you and your husband struggling, the government should give you the money. And as long as the conditions of it, you must stay married. If you're not married, give me back the money. If you're not also, you have said before, the problem with pension, we're not making enough pension. If you have a certain amount of children, you must make at least 3 children to qualify for pension. I think that's fair enough. If you want to have a pension, if the max of a pension is doing pension max here, pension max is the people who work and pay the people who retire. If you retire and you didn't put anybody there to work, how do you get a pension? So, the fairest thing is, you make 3 children, you can't have a tuition. If you didn't make no children, I would be at a new thing. Because you have no money to get.
I actually don't mind that idea too much. When it comes to the government side of things, I could understand what you're talking about there. When it comes to the government, if you want an automatic state-sponsored pension, then we have to be realistic. As you're saying rightfully, Ronnie, the state sponsored pension comes from the current working market, the amount of people currently working. If you didn't supply anybody to the current workforce, then how do you expect to be paid? I could understand the reasoning there, where you must at least have 3 children in the workforce, or three charges. Maybe they aren't directly biologically yours, but before you reach 60, make sure you find 3 children to adopt, because you're going to need them to pay a pension for you. Listen, that could kind of make some sense. Along with your you only get money if you stay married. It's like a marriage counselor. The grant is a marriage counselor, the stay married grant. And the moment you're divorced, they lose the grant. Listen, the country is going to be a unique place if you do such a thing. Many people will hate you. I'm just telling you, they will hate you. But
you know, I'm always telling, if I were to be prime minister of this country, I would still want to. If I get to finish my term, because, you know, I might end up with some lead somewhere. But at the end of the day, to me, it is very common sense. I believe people are being misled, right? When you listen to the pensions, the talk around pension is like, you have to make sure 33, how much ever years of contribution, right? If you're telling me I'm contributing 33.3 years of pension, when you say contributing, does that not mean that I am supposed to look forward to it in the end because I got contributing? But I guess people believe I put in this pension here, I pay my NIS here. When I retire, I'm supposed to have it when I retire, and I guess that's where the mix-up is. So that's why it changes from contribution of money, it changes to people. So it's the same thing. It's true. 3 children, because they can have a third at a time. So you make 3 children that your contribution to your pension, and the reason is true because you can have 3 children, one of them wayward, worthless. You understand? But if you have 3 chances, then you could. You get hit twice.
You know, Mashifu says that's unreasonable and unrealistic, remind you, if you are going into politics. You know, Mashifu, to me, the 2 things it literally isn't is unreasonable and unrealistic. The 2 things it literally is reasonable and realistic, because that is what the reality is. The reason they want to raise the pension age right now is because we don't have enough people paying into the pension compared to the people who are collecting out of it. And it's happening all over the world. There are aging populations. People are not having enough children. So you could say that it feels unfair, but you can't say it's unrealistic, because that really is what reality is. Whose fault is that? Well, it's the here's the thing, Mashipu. You must understand the world doesn't exist as a school institution with principals and deans and somebody in authority that you could go and complain to. This is just reality as it exists. No one owes you anything. No one is supposed to give you anything necessarily. In order for you to get something, you have to convince someone then to give you it. The way you get pension, the idea is that we have a society where the young people, as they work, put aside some amount of their working funds, and that goes towards paying for the elderly. Generally speaking, society as of old was built in such a pyramid structure that there are a significantly larger amount of working age people than there are elderly people. So it's something that is possible. Back in the days where the average woman made 6-7 children, that was an easily possible thing. Something that seemed obvious when you look at it, how it happens. But now, when you have one person having one child, it becomes a difficult thing. It is literally now unrealistic to expect that society could maintain what it once had. And if you ask whose fault is it, well, it's the fault of the people who had less children, I guess. I would not necessarily say that fault thing. I think it's just
we live in weird times where we don't see the practicality and things. It's more of a how things make me feel or how I view things. It's not necessarily like how things are or how it should be. No, rather it's really how it should be, not how it is. I read in all these comments. I really can't answer most of them. Could it be legal? I mean, if I would be the prime minister, it would be legal because I would be in charge of making whatever is legal. Would anybody want to do it? Listen, if people are fine and okay with getting a needy mother grant, I don't understand why they would be so against what I have suggested. You are willing to take a needy mother grant, which is putting you down to be in this
needy mother.
I don't want to use the needy mother, but you're kind of basically charity handle kind of vibe, right? You okay with that? You okay with the government giving single mothers money, but in the case of incentivizing marriage and incentivizing family, we have a problem with that. Like, no, you can't make people stay married. Okay.
Like, you know, if I was able to, like, and the problem is just kind of how some of our countries are formed. But if our country was formed in the more older way, where, you know, it's a country and it's a country's formed kind of out of tribe and family kind of way, so you could share, it doesn't seem strange that you want to share the same moral aims. Aiming for a family unit that is pressured to stay together isn't a bad aim. That's not a negative aim necessarily, but in our country with the extreme freedom and individualism, it seems like such a ridiculous premise, but I honestly don't think it is. Someone says, oh, maybe it's the actuaries, and I don't think it's the actuaries. I think it's a fairy tale to think that it's always going to be possible that young people pay for the old people regardless of what that ratio is going to be. Go look at how many children women had on average in 1930. And then look at it on average now and understand that the maths is literally not the same anymore. It's literally a different mathematical equation. No, it's about the mismanagement of funds, unscrupulous employers not paying contributions. That's part of it. But that's not the reason that Japan is struggling with the same thing. That's not the reason that much of Europe is struggling with the same thing. It's not only about the employers hiding contributions, and that's a fact in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't deny that at all. Currently, when it was closed down, it was revealed that this massive government state-run enterprise for years was not paying the NIS contributions for many of their workers. And I agree, that's true. That is a part of it, yes. But there's also a mathematical reality that we cannot shy away from. We have no right to be in this state of affairs, no right? Well, I don't believe that. I would always think it was a fairy tale to expect that some people managing your money when they have no consequence to pay for mismanagement, that they're going to manage it perfectly. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. It's a fairy tale to believe that.
Yeah, but so I just want to say, sorry to say, but Trinidad and Tobago, we have become so used to everything being free, and it was because we had the oil and gas industry that we would have been afforded so much free things. Look true, just if you look at your neighbors in Barbados, they don't even get CXP free. And they are the headquarters of CXP, and they don't get CXP free. We just get CXC, you can get a full degree free. You just get lunch up to Form 6 if you choose. You understand? So it's like would it be if with the mismanagement and otherwise, right? Which I had said I felt like a few years ago, long before when oil and gas was still booming, the subsidy off of the oil and gas off of the gas pumps should have been pulled back. Little by little, so you kind of get used to it. But nobody would have been happy with that. They would have been really upset because but now hard times, they make cut. Nobody don't want to make a cut in a hard time, but you actually don't have the resources to give. if you don't have it to give, you could break up my bones all how. If I borrow money from the man down the road and he come back to get his money and I don't have it, the man could do me what he wants, he can't get it. It's like trying to make a rough bleed.
Yes, correct. And that, as you said, a lot of things in Italy are also free, same as Trinidad, and say stifle the economy. You look at many countries and that's the case. We should have diversified. Riyadh Ram syrup, that is the understatement of the century. Of course we were supposed to. Of course we were supposed to. But again, when you give bureaucrats and politicians the charge of money and power, that where they do not get a negative consequence for failing, they could fail upward, then no surprise that they do what they do. But in countries all over the world, you recognize that in Italy, that happened in Argentina, it happened also. When you get governments who overspend, they just want to give out goodies. It's not a sustainable model. So you could say that, yeah, you wish or you hope that the pension should be able to pay for more people, but if it cannot, it cannot. It just cannot. You cannot get blood out of stone. It's just not going to happen. And in that case, that's why I on the semi-joking side was in agreement with Ronnie's idea, where in order for you to access the state pension, you make 3 working children, and once you have your 3 children, well, you have access to the state pension. If you don't, well, tough. Hope you have your annuity in gear. It can. What are you saying it can? It's illegal not to pay NIS. According to where you are, if you are the employer and you are employing someone, yes, it's illegal.
It's illegal to take pension if you're not paying it. That is illegal. So to make your worker feel like you are paid pension, so thereby you take it. I believe that's how much the employer does pay one, and the employer does pay 2 or something like that.
I think the employer pays more than the employee.
Right. So if you are taking the NIS out of your employees' pay and making them believe that they have paid a contribution to NIS, that is illegal. But if you are not paying NIS, I mean, if you have a business, the most you can do is like come down on your butt.
I think you could get yourself in some trouble if you're not paying people's NIS. People could insist that you pay the NIS, I believe. I'm pretty sure there's some legislation in line with that.
Companies that is still employees that did not pay NIS, and they could go and fix it for themselves. So in that case, it is illegal to make them feel like that. If you know you're not paying no NIS, you know you're paying no NIS.
Yeah. And there are some people who, like, in the construction world, as I often say, I am involved in construction and contracting, and there are people who work there, and when you tell them about NIS, they tell you flat, plain, point blank, I don't want to pay any NIS. Don't take any NIS out of my money. I don't want you taking any NIS out of my money. There are people who see things like that flat, point blank. And I mean,
I agree.
I could understand why some people would say that, but that's some people's view. But you know, when it comes to benefits, Rani, I would agree with most of what you're saying there. And there are countries now in Eastern Europe that are doing what you're talking about, paying married couples to some extent. And usually how it's done, it's not paying married couples directly, but I think in some of those Eastern European countries, if as a mother you have 3 children, after 3 children your family pays no taxes basically. And
nice.
That sounds like a good idea to me. A family unit pays no taxes after the 3rd child. You're encouraging families to expand and stay together. That's a reasonable thing. 6 children, no tax. No. Not 6. That's not the numbers. In Hungary, yes, I know in Hungary with Viktor Orban and those guys. In Poland, I think they're doing some of that. I believe in Iceland they're doing something similar to that. They're trying different techniques to try and get people to make the babies. And there's a technique to, and I consider this very interesting. I find this very interesting. Nathan, who tell you I want 3 children, well, you don't have to get 3 children. Nobody is forcing you to make the 3 children. But if you have the 3 children, you understand that the taxes are going to be considerably less. But I think many people in modern time, they regularly say this. One of the direct ways they lower birth rate in many countries is by increasing the education of the girls and women. And sometimes I wonder some of it because they make it seem like it's kind of a consequence of advantage. So the reason uneducated females, women, girls have more children, it's because when they're uneducated, the society takes advantage of them and they're forced to make more children. And sometimes I wonder if, yes, some of that might be true, but if partially some of the consequence is in the direction of the general global education system. So when they talk about educating women more, they educate them in Western ideals, which encourage women in directions away from family. So then, is it education causes women to have more children, less children, or that the style of education we use in modern times is an indoctrination that encourages women to have less children? I don't know if you understand the nuance of what I'm asking there. Like, is it that... Is it just that the education itself, because they were advantaged when they were ignorant, is causing less children? Or is it that they are directing the education purposefully to encourage less children out of children, out of the youth? The style does support children production. Smarter educated people tend to have less children, yes. And that's what I ask about, because that's not necessarily true. It's smarter, more educated women tend to have less children, because there are many smart educated men who don't have many qualms about how many children they have. It's generally educating and they have statistics on this. You educate the girls and the women to decrease the birth rate of a region. And that's what I'm asking. Is it just a consequence of being smart so you have less? Or is it a consequence of being educated into thinking that having less is better?
I think it's education, so you have less. Because I was listening to a documentary on the one-child policy in China, right? And the person was saying, like China didn't need to have the one-child policy because as you educate women, they make less children because, I believe they brought up Taiwan and a few other countries in the region that the birth rate is also very low and they didn't have the one-child policy. So they kind of just realizing when they educated women, the less children will be born. And I think a bit of it is a little shame too, because people, the older people, they kind of tell you, don't study boys and study a book. And I mean, that's not bad to tell people. It's not bad to tell people, but it kind of is like when a girl get pregnant and she's not married, but she's still very young. She ain't have a good career with her, and they kind of make her feel very bad. Another woman are watching this and like, yeah, boy, that's not for me. That's not for me.
And when you look at it as a consequence of education, the nature of our education system as it is it's the investment for a lot of young people is time. If you encourage young women to get further educated, very likely you're encouraging them to stay institutionalized for a longer period of time. And there could be an obvious consequence directly there. Now, if you're talking about 7 children, let's say you have an interest in having 7 children and there are people who with interest in 7 children. As a woman, you want to have 7 children. Ideally, You may want to wait in between having children for your body to recover. Let's say you want to wait 3 years between children. If you're waiting 3 years between children and having children, that's 7 threes at 21. If you want to do that, you kind of have to, by default of just time, start at 20 or somewhere near there. So if your education has you institutionalized up till the age of 24, just by default of time, you have less time to do this whole baby making business. When a generation of women, girls really and truly, started having babies at 15, they had 15 years before they even reached geriatric pregnancy. They have a lot of baby making time. But if you finished university at the age of 24 and you even find the Mr. Right yet, you understand, you have a limited window. So it obviously forces a decrease there by default. I think by educating women makes them want to work, and then it leaves less time for that responsibility. Don't worry, Latin America and Africa birth rates still through the roof, and India, correct. Africa has a very youthful population booming down on that side. Yeah, Riyadh, what's going on, bro? Good night, Michelle.
How you guys going? Yeah, how you guys going? I just wanted to say, with regards to women and education and working, I think we could all agree that there's a benefit to that having women educated, so they're no longer in situations where it is that they have to choose between surviving and being dependent on somebody else in order to succeed or have a life, But another angle we could work towards is making having a family and working at the same time easier. So for instance, having like childcare, having making it more affordable, all of those things would increase the birth rate because women wouldn't have to choose between a career and having a family. So that's one way to look at it. It's like if you increase the opportunity for them to have both, because men don't necessarily have to make that choice. We don't really have to stay at home. We're not expected to stay at home with the children or anything like that. So we could have our careers, but so rather than try to have some sort of equity with regards to how it is that they could have a career and have a family, maybe it would see a rise in the birth rates as well.
I've seen that. I've seen that suggestion that what we need is to make the workplace more conducive to family, and I could see the benefits to that, and I do agree it would go some ways, but I think it's a modern lie that we could get everything. I
don't think we could get everything. I think it's just that we have to be we have to, rather than try to go back to a time where it is that women didn't have these opportunities. So I don't think that's possible anymore.
That's not possible.
Right, I think we just have to become work and improving the new normal. So she Ronnie asks how early childhood care. I mean, Trinidad has that, but we could start at like nursery, make it more affordable. But because it's very expensive, maternity leave for extended period of time, maybe not make it a problem for women, because like usually when women in the workforce and they have a child and they have to stay home for a period of time, it affects their opportunities in the workplace. They're viewed differently in companies and so on.
But Riyadh, the thing is,
giving paternity leave, and men also have that opportunity, it'd be less of a distinction between men and women in the workplace.
But what I'm saying is, I don't think that is even possible. Like, if you're talking about the government in control of everything in a socialist style thing, you could attempt to do some of those things. But if you're talking free market by and large, if construction, I have a contracting firm, or teaching, I teach privately. I have some tutors that teach for me. If as a tutor, you as a man are able to give me constant work without ever pausing, you earn more than the woman who has to pause for the 9 months plus the other time to take care of the child. That's just the default of reality. And there's
But then we see society is suffering as a result, right?
I don't agree. Here's the thing. I don't think society suffers as a result.
You're saying that the decrease of the birth rate is a problem.
Oh, whoa. Well, that's I agree. The decrease of the birth rate is a problem, but to me, the way to tackle that is allowing us to get away from the obsession of the feminist revolution, trying to negate all differences between male and female and believe that gender roles are a moral negative. I think that's what we need to get rid of, because we have adopted a counterproductive worldview on things. We have adopted an erroneous biological view of things. Biology is my main subject I teach. And the view that we try to push into modern society is against the science of biology. Somehow we're supposed to create massive social programs to somehow attempt to negate the realities of the differences between men and women. So, okay, a woman, it should be unfit. You said, I remember earlier you said that it's reality that you don't want it to be that women must needs be depend on someone to take care of their needs or something to that effect. But the reality of biology is that a man would always have to depend on a woman to have a child, because we can't do it ourselves. So it's like the biology creates a default.
I'm not disagreeing about the biology of it. We were all aware of the biology between the differences between men and women. What I'm trying to say is that given women, the education has been a way for women to have choice of the man that they end up with, or if it is that in a situation that they no longer feel safe in, or they feel threatened, and they have the opportunity to escape that system. Throughout history, we've seen many cases where women in abusive relationships, I'm not saying that women can't be abusive either, but what I'm saying is they have an opportunity to leave those situations. And we're speaking about it, about, from my perspective, it sounds like you're speaking about trying to go back to a time where it is that they no longer have that opportunity.
No, I'm not talking about removing opportunity or ability to make choice. I'm talking about the worldview that says the differences between the sexes have been negated by technology. And that's not true. And attempting to tell women that they could live a life that is at the same level as a man and somehow still manage to eke a family out of that life is also not true, because it doesn't work like that. The actual facts of the matter, the reality as it lays before people, does not support that. It's not going to be the same.
Right, so what I'm going to say to that, and Ronnie could jump in after because I think she wants to say something, is that if it is that we're in a situation now where women are given that choice, a lot of women are currently choosing the career. And then society is suffering because of the birth rate. So it's either that we make the decision, we create a scenario where it is that it's no longer a binary thing. It's either one or the other. They can have both or attempt to have both, or we end up in a situation where it is that we see birth rates reducing. That's my view.
Yeah, and I am not against attempting to make things more conducive in the workplace. Like today on X, formerly Twitter, I there was a video. I think the video originated from TikTok, strange enough, but it went viral over there. A young lady crying about her first day, or she just started a 9 to 5, and she was lamenting that it's not. How is one supposed to live life like this when you come home in the dark and you leave before anything? How are you going to make friends? How are you going to meet anyone? How are you going to start a family, etc., etc.? And it was so frustrating and all of that. And I understand that that is the reality. And I think what I am trying to see is that what we need to teach, it's not that we're attempting to remove that opportunity from anyone. If anyone wants to do it, you can do it. But be more honest with the reality as it exists. And I think talking to many young women were sold a lie about what is actually possible. They were told that you could have it all. You could be the top independent woman, girl boss, independent babe, and still have that picket fence with your 3 children to sit in your 5-seater sedan with your husband that is the leader of your household and all of that. And there are opportunity costs. If you go in one direction, you're not going to be able to get the other thing. That's just the reality. And I am saying that I think we should teach more of that a bit more honestly. Yeah, Ronnie, jump in. What were you going to say?
I was right. Just to the first point, I think it was the first one. When I'm bringing up ADHD, I don't. You were saying
Nathan Springer, curve on.
Men should be given paternity leave so that it would kind of even out the women to men needing to stay home. And it's my take on them. My thought on that is instead of doing everything that I just know. Right. So what you are suggesting is we can only workforce further by giving men
Your cake burning there, Ronnie?
Nah, but sorry, it's fine.
Yeah, you have to try to say if you can't say it. But
Yeah, we can any workforce by now taking men out of the workforce as well. When you could just, just be like, woman, you can say this one out about abuse. I've heard it time and time again. Yeah, but I don't want to say this, but a lot of women at work that stay at home aren't really abused that much because, sorry to say, in most cases when a woman is at home, the man comes home, is greeted with a hot meal, children choir, everything in the house kind of like same time, so he can get a little lovey-dovey. He is less aggressive with
Ronnie, I don't know if you could. I don't know if you'll win that point on our.
I would say right?
And I have friends that work and I'm married.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it comes across like you're saying the reason some women are abused is because they work too much, and if they stay home, they wouldn't get licks. That's why it's sounding like you're saying.
It's sounding like I know a lot of women that work very hard and they are so exhausted when they come home to frustration and then they frustrate their husband. It becomes futile. That's what I'm saying.
Well, Ronnie, I'll blame that on capitalism and having now that we have a shrinking middle class and people have to have a 2-income household in order to survive for most people. So that's our view. It's like we've gone so far now. Like if it was our grandparents or our parents, they could raise a whole family on a 1-income salary. The father made all the money and that was enough for everybody to go to school.
But Riyadh, you don't think that by encouraging women out into the workplace, the main capitalists, the corporations with the most money, were actually able to halve salaries effectively?
Also, why you think they're the ones who benefit from having a larger workforce?
So in other words, it's anti-capitalist to encourage women to stay out of the workforce.
Right, it's free. This is a free market.
Just to answer something before it goes too far, I was seeing Michelle saying that she believes part of it is that men have changed, so many women will be very comfortable being a certain kind of woman to a certain kind of man, and I agree 100% with you. I don't think that the societal changes were done by exclusively only changing women. I think they did change men too. There are many men who don't think of manhood in the same light. They don't think of being a man as being the same thing. So I agree.
My girlfriend is like, she would love to be a housewife and not have to work and everything. It's like if I could not work too and, spend my time doing other things, you know, and don't have to worry about income. But the reality is, a lot of people have to get up and go to work.
You just have to do it.
I want to jump in here.
Yeah, positive. I know you're there, why?
Yeah, he was waiting. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was doing this conversation to see, and I think it comes back to where we really want as a society. Because if young men are growing up one particular way, women going the opposite, and we're going in two different directions, eventually we're going to tear apart. And that's what we've seen the result of. Because I think both husband and wife could work and could manage a house or a household basically. Once you share roles and responsibilities and the way you're supposed to. But if you belittle me for taking care of a plot in my daughter here, and you're making me feel small for that, the average man cannot handle them kind of fatigue on the workplace.
But positive. I'm not stopping you. I just asking as you're going on, as you continue. You think in modern times that's a serious thing where men give each other pressure for doing things for their children? Because I have a daughter, and none of my brethren that I know, even in the most manly testosterone driven construction field, I go there, I go and tell them about doing something for my daughter, and they smile at it. So I don't know that to be true.
Because we are in transition, we're changing, but the feminist movement created a kind of culture with a particular era, and that is the era probably a year or two about minds, but that's how they would see it. You understand me? I've got a daughter down to a kind of my daughter was seen. Oh, I'm taking time off for my daughter was seen as something wrong. I could be almost, I could be wrong, or I could challenge me on this. If something happens at the school, with the school fights, and a father shows up compared to the mother, do you think the child's response might be different?
100%. 100%.
Like, Nathan, just think about it from the perspective like how your father would have, or your grandfather would have viewed you doing some of those things with your daughter. You know, that their generation, they would view it differently.
Yes, I agree. No,
we're talking about how women have changed, but men have changed as well.
I agree. And some of the change is positive, though. Some of the change is positive, I would say.
Feminism did a lot, though. A lot of bad things. I think it was the one for men to help in the house. I don't agree.
You
don't want help in the house?
No, I do not think that is emasculating men. Helping in the house is not emasculating.
I'm not saying that is demasculating. I'm saying another elements in the feminist movement promoting demasculating men. That's what I'm saying.
They want to make men more effeminate.
And
that's why I'm non-masculine man. They want to control men and do all sorts of things.
You know, feminism wanted men to help in the home. It's the patriarchy who for changing men rules. You know, one. I think sometimes we have an inaccurate view of some of the things of old. Now, some of the things of old were different because they were different and times were different. Men did more manual labor. If you had a man, and before unions got the 8-hour work week and all, if you had a man doing 12 hours of manual labor, generally speaking, he just comes home and relaxes. It's a different time. But now, if you do 8 hours of sitting at your computer on Microsoft Excel, and you come home and your wife did the same 8 hours of Excel work and spreadsheet work, and you all come home and then you tell her you want to be the man of the house and sit down doing nothing, that's a whole different scope. And obviously, if the reality of the situation changed, then the reality of the consequences and results obviously would have to change too. Like, if you are not ripping your muscles day in, day out, and your hands are bruised when you come home, bro, go and wash the wares and sweep. But at the same time, if there's manual labor and the man is the one doing a chunk of this manual labor, then you counterbalance that by doing the others. I mean, it's a kind of give and take. And I agree, as modern times changed work in and of itself, it would change the share of the responsibilities. It would change the share of the responsibilities. If you as a man, you don't have that same amount of manual labor, obviously you try to carry the weight more in another area. Obviously. And just before you jump in, Michelle, you jump in next. To give my generation a point, I find personally, this is anecdotal, I have no statistics to prove this, but my personal opinion, I find when I look around at fathers in my generation, at my peer level, pretty much all of them I see are nearly to the level of obsessively interested in their children. I don't see many of that fathers who don't want their children kind of narrative that some people talk about. I don't know if I just have a different father circle. I don't see it. Yeah, Michelle, what's up?
Hi, good night. Alright, so what I was saying in terms of feminism is that remember different areas would have had different starts to their feminism, right? The feminism movement depending on the culture of the country and the people. In America, radical feminism is what we technically see a lot of. But initially, the movement was meant to bring equality for women, all right? Allow them to vote and have a say in the economy. Feminism had branches, right? The bra burning feminism, not a lot of not every woman subscribes to that. As a matter of fact, right now I think there's a big movement on social media to return to what we call trad wife, which is the traditional wife. A lot of women would love to go back to that pre-World War era when women had to go out to work because the men were fighting wars. Right? So to blame feminism wholly and solely for the change in the structure of the society of the world is not, I don't think it's really a fair statement. There is good, there is some not so good. Good one, make me laugh. Sorry. Okay. And so we have to be fair. The thing is, economy has changed, times have changed. We're in 2023, and men are still trying to catch up. And I blame, to be honest, I have a little pet peeve with mothers and sons. I wouldn't like to tell you. And there's a reason for that. Women train their daughters to become independent. Don't depend on a man. Get a job, get your education. But yet they baby their sons to expect a woman to cater to them. So now we have a clash in expectations in relationships. Right? So women want to work, yes, but then you come home, and because I get this a lot at work. The problem is the husband gets home and just doesn't want to do anything. And it causes a lot of marital problems.
I know, I'm sure.
Yeah? So at the end of the day, it's really just about being fair. Because I don't think we can ever really go back and turn the clock back. And in terms of the birth rates, women, we being a selfie culture, women don't see any benefit to rearing children. Children rearing is a selfless act. You give up a lot of yourself,
correct,
your desires, your goals, your wishes, and there's no benefit to these young women having children. My daughter, their generation coming up saying flat out, we don't want kids because it just doesn't make sense to them.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. That's what I said. I think and I don't think it's coincidental that your daughter, who is in an education system with a certain design, thinks that, because I think your daughter, I'm not sure, I think her age is somewhere mid-teens or late teens going up there. I think if you go back to the 90s and find someone her age who was being educated, and they weren't being miseducated in the 90s, it just had a different cultural education. That young lady may have wished for children, even with the education, because it's a cultural side with the I don't want no children and anti-natalism. It's a cultural side to it too.
Because remember, women's worth were tied into having children. The more children you had as a woman, remember our grandparents. Why did our grandparents have like 12 kids? Because a woman's worth was seen in the amount of children, and depending on the culture, how many boy children you have.
In terms of biological reality, isn't a woman's worth in the amount of children she could have. Fact.
So what about a woman who can't have children biologically? Does that mean she's worthless?
No. I didn't say it's her only worth, but in the specialized worth of a woman biologically. What is the specialized worth of a woman biologically?
Well, biologically, if you're looking at it at that aspect in terms of what is something only a woman could do, well, then that would be having children.
Right. So, isn't it actually an accurate thing to incorporate within your cultural teaching the fact that a woman's worth is partially hinged on having children?
We can teach that it is a beautiful, positive thing to do rather than hinging it on your only way. See, when you initially said it, I was like, okay, is that our only worth?
No.
Versus it is part of what makes a woman such a unique creature, and it is a blessing to be able to have children, or because of repopulation and all that jazz.
And I think, you see, like how you phrase that there, that's what I want to be taught to more young ladies, instead of the version of feminism that attempts to tell them you can do anything a man could do better. That version of feminism, I think, is a psyop. It's a lie.
Well,
It is a lie.
currently, women are leading in university education. So that's another thing that men are going to have to grapple with in the future, of women taking up leadership roles because they're more educated. Look at our universities. Guys can't get in, and if they do get in, they lower in the classes. But the question I have is, for the people who have children, how are you guys affording them? Because right now, that's one of the questions that I have, is like, how is this like
I have one.
Yeah, how is this like gonna pay for Pampers, and I'm educated and I have a good job, and whatever. I don't know how you guys doing it.
Riyadh, let me tell you.
So funny.
Let me tell you, just before Michelle has more experience than me, but let me just tell you what I said before, and I stand by this. The idea of having children being prohibitively expensive is a psyop. It is not true.
How much is baby formula? I passed in the grocery and I see
Breast milk is free. Breast milk is free.
Breastfeeding is free.
And and it's way healthier for your child. It's I'll tell you all, and I know my wife wouldn't mind I talking some of my baby girl business like that. She never drank a drop of formula, not even a teaspoon. And she went straight from that feeding into eating food. That girl eating any fruit, grabbing fruits, eating it, biting, chewing, eating adult food. That's what is the next step. So you go from free breast milk to whatever you eating.
Yeah.
And there is no, you see the idea that you need to go and buy the Nestum and buy the this and buy the that, and every month is tagged on $3,000 in extra little trinkets that really and truly are not essential, but they're there to be the background to your picture, or for when the brother or the sister or the in-law, anybody asks, you could tell them, well, actually I have the Nestum and I have this and I have that and I have that. A lot of it is kind of keeping up with the Joneses. 90% of the expenses of babies is for the appearances.
When you want the milk, when you want the little warmers, and you want the fancy car seats, and you want the little rocker, little
Riyadh, trust me, 90%.
Right? You have to pay for early childhood education. You have to pay for kindergarten, then lessons in school.
ECCE free in Trinidad, bro.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want. Okay, I'm not gonna send my child to ECC. As a capitalist, you should agree with me. You shouldn't be for ECC.
No, you see where you get in there? That's where the expense really comes in. When you understand the value of certain things, then is where the expense comes in. So I teach, and I teach private lessons. And I this is an example I regularly make. There are some people who understand the value of certain things. Private tuition. I remember in my days in university, private tuition was teaching private tutoring was how I made it through life. And those lessons were not exactly cheap. That's $200 a session 10 years ago. And I remember there were times there were some parents running up to CXC, they would want you there every day. And I'm not even talking about super wealthy people. They would want you there every day and they'd pay for it. And that's where the expenses do come in. When you understand the value of certain things and you want to pay for education and pay for extracurricular stuff. And yes, I agree, expenses do come in more there.
Because I come from a fairly middle class family, right? Lower to middle class family. And I have two other siblings, and the cost associated with our parents were very focused on education. They wanted to make sure that we get the best education possible because they understood that would make the difference to us in the future in terms of getting upwards mobility, and the cost associated from seeing how much they spent in order for us to have that difference is. I think what it is that a lot of people think about when they say that, okay, maybe we can't afford to have children. There's a lot of people who could afford to have, I guess most people could afford to have children, but it's like, if it is that you want to give them certain opportunities you may not have had, then I think that's where the disparity into how much it is you spend.
I understand that. And I think though, the obsession with giving them things you didn't have may actually be unhealthy and may lead to some of the negative effects we see of parenting in modern times, even though wanting better for your children is a positive thing. But wanting to give them the bulldozer parent kind of way, where you want to clear all the obstacles in front of them.
Yeah, about education. I'm talking about like.
I know, and that I said that on that side, true. But there's a side to that where you see in modern times there where it kind of goes a little above and beyond. But what I noticed, Riyadh, is I came from a family similarly, and our parents did the same thing. They devoted a lot to education, and they did it. That's the thing. I saw a curve. It was a curve one said that when the team depends on you, you make it happen, and that's something I realize about parenting to some extent. Especially when you think back of years gone by, where two people at 18 and 16 put together, throw in a mud hut somewhere and tell them figure it out, and they figured it out. I am not saying you should do that now, but bear that in mind.
Sorry. So Riyadh, what happened? Let me just give you a little bit. I grew up in a poor family, right? Education was also very big with my parents, but we couldn't afford to go lessons and afford all those things. So, and to be honest, I don't think we did bad. When we got a little older, we were able to help ourselves and go through, and I understand, your brackets in terms of wanting education. Now, I think the goal of parenting should be to raise well-adjusted, morally sound human beings. Education will come when you yourself teach them. My daughter, I have one child. She's 18. She'll be 18 soon. We didn't have money to send her to no big set of lessons, swimming, all those different things. My husband and I. And she's one of the smartest children you will ever come across. Well loved, well adjusted, all right? Very balanced. Is because the energy was put into raising her as a human being, as an independent person. And now, as far as we could take her education-wise, she's going to take it the rest of the way herself. All right, because she has the ambition and she has the drive. Sometimes when you give kids too much, they take for granted. They don't develop a resiliency to push forward.
Yeah, I've heard in parenting, some people say the most important investment is time. That said, so
100%.
If you have the time,
a little bit of time, just spend with the kids. You see, all these kids these days behind tablets and screen, Peppa Pig, and you know what else they're watching these days. In my days was Backyardigans and TVN. But in my days, when my daughter was younger, she's going to be 18. Yeah, my daughter will be 18 in December.
I don't have a tab for my daughter. I don't show her screen like that because I was reading where they show that there's a study they said that giving your child screen from a young age, it replaces the endorphin boost. I forget which specific endorphin boost that they get from interacting with humans. It actually kind of replaces it with screen interaction. So your child doesn't even get the same reaction from interacting with you. And I could tell you, my daughter, without a lot of screen time, her main interaction is human. She loves human interaction. She's very good at it. She loves talking to people. When she's bored, she's looking for human beings. She's not looking for some inanimate something. So, I mean, there's...
Exactly what is going to get her far. You see, that's the thing. Children are losing those people skills. They're losing it and they cannot communicate. They're watching each other in their faces and be like, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to talk. And that is going to be a lost art soon. So I think if you want to have kids, boy, start with one. You don't have to have them back to back.
Yeah.
It could just be one. And
Riyadh go strong by those study that by stallion behavior out here. Go like the grandfathers of old. 12. Pow, pow, pow.
Yeah,
I actually support your position. I actually believe in the no children ideology. And I'm probably the youngest on the panel. I believe in the no children ideology. No, because when it's only
We'll hear you in a decade.
currently, I see them as liabilities and not assets.
Excuse?
I'm beginning to write down, and I said this openly in a mail-based session with guys, and when we begin to discuss it, we understood why we felt that way. I'm not saying that I'm correct, but I'm just saying it's my perspective on it.
I dig that. I dig that. It's your perspective.
I'm a single parent, and somebody sacrifice and the chances that some of the things I see my mother do, me and one child go through some of the experiences I have, I would avoid it complete.
Okay.
So while being out there,
Do you think what do you think? You say you think children are a liability and not an asset. What are you going to do after 60?
Look for something to do like them old people nowadays. You travel the world, you go on cruise, wherever money you save up until. No, but I'm not saying if it happened, I wouldn't accept it. If God put it, I would accept and I would take responsibilities. But I wouldn't go looking for it.
No. I understand what you're saying.
as someone who works in hospitals, dealing with elderly people as well, one of their greatest, things when you talk to them is that they're lonely and they don't have anybody, no children. They have these big houses and there is no one at the end of the day to visit, to help take care of them. And they have to leave it for people like us, like me, to put them in homes where they eventually pass on with nobody around. I'm just saying that's at the end of that. Like when you reach that end, you're young and you can say that now. But when you get to that stage, that's what I hear anyway.
And
regrets.
Relationships. Listen, I think the modern connectivity has thrown away the value of family in our eyes. The ability we have to have best friends from all over the world that we could just on a moment's notice kind of throw away the importance that family is. Family is that direct circle that is totally linked by blood, kind of forced to be on your side to some extent.
Family sometimes could be the worst boy.
That's all about the world. That is all about the world. Technically speaking, Israel and their neighbors are cousins. They talk about that and they're still fighting. So I understand family has its woes, but the alternative is by yourself. And the reality is, it's seen as human punishment to put someone in solitary confinement because humans are social creatures. The idea that you could somehow make it on your own is not true. And who better to depend on than family seems to be a kind of obvious thing to me. Now, I am not saying that you have to go out and have children. I'm not saying that you have to change your view. But to me, when I put those things in the balance, it seems kind of obvious to me that the benefits of children far outweigh the disadvantages, the liabilities in my balance.
Something else into the mix quickly, and this is why I asked the question to trigger this conversation earlier, right? Me and my girlfriend had a conversation about a year ago. She just completed her bachelor's at that point in time. Did not want to do a master's, wanted a family at the point in time. I not too long got a job at the point. I'm now beginning to build myself as a man too, right? So I told her, do your master's, organize that. If you had to organize family, organize that.
Hey, positive girlfriend, if you're on this app, we had to have a talk. Positive radiation. You may be doing wickedness to your girlfriend, eh? Your clock is not the same as your girlfriend's clock.
Oh yeah, let me finish here. Let me
Go ahead.
Right. So what I told her to go ahead while I got set up and organize or whatever, right? So I'm still working, building, putting things in place. She completed her bachelor's this year, graduated out of it, and is now telling me, out of the conversation, she's now in a sense saying she's ready for her family basically. Now it's time for family structure, and she appreciated the fact that I told her, don't wait on me and put you your academics. You know what's the challenge now? They now, technically, is now telling me, from an academic standpoint, I can't push them and not push myself. Which I find to be fair and reasonable, but in that case, where you think family would fall in that case or in that scenario? When my aim is house, structure, provision.
That's a good aim for you to have. Now, here's the thing that I think, one, could be a bit another psyop told in modern times, that somehow you need to have everything in place before you bring in your family that you have created. To have everything in place, you're going to reach 45, bro. And now, for a man at 45, that might be fine. You could still go and have 6 children. Careful if you're encouraging some woman out there. I am not going to tell any woman you have to have children at any point in time. That's your prerogative. But careful if you're telling a woman to delay something like that. You don't want to be the one when she reaches 36 and she recognizes, oh no one told me that 35 is geriatric pregnancy, and 36 I already have complications with making this baby, and it's already so many times more difficult than if I was that age and my body is going to recover. You don't want to be the one holding the blame in anyone's mind for such a decision.
Okay, me now.
Yeah, Ronnie.
I would just like to say, ladies, if you with a man and you tell him you want to have children, you want to have a family, and you tell him, break up with a man, please, if you tell a man that you want to be a housewife and he tells you, break up with a man, please, because listen, right? I have positive will break my heart tonight. I have a friend. And he doesn't have any children, right? And he is older, right? We had a conversation, and this man, it had a very emotional effect on him. We were watching, I don't know which day it was, probably World Children's Day or something like that. I don't know. A woman who worked in freaking fertility clinic, right? So she was working in a fertility clinic, and she was talking about, a lot of women now, they are becoming accidentally childless, right? So they decided to hold off on it until, now I can't have children. And she was talking about, being older is very difficult, even with IVF and all of these things. And he was there with me, and we were talking about it. And he actually did IVF with his ex-wife, right? Eventually their marriage fell apart because children are coming, they did the IVF, they did like 3 rounds of IVF. She got 2 successful plans, and then it failed. And the whole thing just became a mess. It just mashed up everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it couldn't work for them. And to think now that young women are being told, hold off on it until they reach to this point, and they deal idolizing these women like Rihanna and Nicki Minaj, who are the first at 38. All you do have Rihanna and Nicki Minaj money, them have a private doctor at the bedside when they might come. You understand?
And you don't know what their complications were either.
I have a solution. I have a
They
solution.
have,
What's that, Riyadh?
but they have the money to deal with it.
Older men date younger women. I
I
have
see
to.
that all the time. I see that all the time.
Riyadh, that's the solution that religions found eons ago.
I'm not saying underage woman, by the way. I'm just saying.
Of course.
I know. I had no doubt you were saying. I had no doubt you meant older.
You want to be with somebody who's older and they're financially stable and they're able to have the child, then, and if men want to wait until they're 45, we'll let them wait. I think the problem with conversations like this is that we want to make generalizations on topics and conversations that are so individualistic in the solutions, because what might be a solution for one person may not be a solution for another person, you know. So if you fix the suit, you know, if positive radiation want to wait until he is able to and his girlfriend doesn't, well then they can have a conversation and maybe they need to part ways at this point or not, and then they decide to make it work, you know. I think that's
Let me jump back in.
You're talking generals because you're talking about a big group. We can't talk in specifics all the time.
I know, I get that. No, I get that.
It's just a cover, like, of course, Positive and his girlfriend, they are their own individuals and they have to work their situation at the point in time when that's for them. But in generally speaking, that's just how it is. In most cases.
No, but let me jump in. And I think we are to that critical point because there's a decent age difference. I'm at least 3 or 4 years older. And then, I think within the environment I grew up from, I take responsibility for the decisions I make. So if I choose to have and anything happens to that child financially, I would feel as if I did the mother and the child an injustice. So it's like, I understand my situation, I would make a statement. She understands why and how as well. Because not to say I'll tell you wait and I'm not doing nothing. I wouldn't tell you wait and me and mine blocks and me and mine cement. If you catch me and nothing ain't happening.
Correct.
So it's not like I just tell you on whole. But I think in general, we have plenty of happening with most of the young men I know, to be very honest with you. We prefer have certain systems in place before we get to that stage. Because it makes no sense. I have a young lady impregnated and she can't eat properly. She can make a defective picnic. No, I've been straightforward because you're creating problems for yourself. So why not see how best I could sort out as much as or prevent as much as the issue?
Positive. You're speaking as a good man, and you're right. It makes no sense as a man. You're looking to go and populate the world out there, and you have no way to provide for the population you're trying to make. You're 100% right. Now, I smile because you said a decent age gap, and you said 3 years, bro. When people talking age gap, usually they're talking 10 plus years and 3 years. You're still very much in the same generation with each other. That's not a very big age gap. And I understand what you're saying. Now, I think the relationships of like the 19th, 20th century, where we pulled away a little more from the amount of age gap it had. The age gap provides a certain obvious comfort where the man has the provision already comfortably secured and he could go out there and now look to bring somebody in a nest he has already built. Now, I think the version of family that we were attempting to do for the last 2-3 centuries or so was a little more risky version than that, where the idea is that the couples come in when they're both young, because many of the couples of the last 100 years or so, the idea was you get both married around that 20-year group. You're not yet ready. Neither of you have accomplished that kind of thing, and you're working to work it out together as you go. Now, that makes much more straightforward sense if you have a family structure around you. So you could get married at 24 and 22 much more easily if both of you have both parents who are willing to help you with different aspects of it. Then it becomes a much easier thing to do.
Because the church community is part of this problem. We don't lead them out, specifically the Christian community, where they believe in marriages after 25. So you have a rush between that 25 to about 30 gap, where you have young couples just getting married and it's a rush to have children. And then it's complicated pregnancies, it's all kind of chaos. And then all the so-called church people and all the mothers are sacrifice in the world just disappear all of a sudden. And then is you one in the hospital with a woman 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because the hemorrhage and all kind of craziness. Because they don't support young marriages. They don't support having children young.
I agree. And I think that's a bit of the modern Protestant view that has come into some Christian churches. They go along with a more modernist view of things, and you're supposed to, as the man, you're supposed to have this and have that and have that. And I remember I heard some people giving advice to young people, and they're telling them you're supposed to have your house and your land and all of that before you even look to marry. And I'm thinking, well, you're telling young people marry at 40, because when you see 1.75 million for a house, how you expect anybody to buy 1.75 million dollars of house before anything? So
Question, right? Is the youngest you think that somebody could have a child and to raise that child properly? On average. 18?
Listen.
That's a baby still.
Listen, I had a friend, she had her child in school, and to this day, I wish that was me. Like, she pop out them 2 children, and now them children them heading into secondary school. They doing well, but the thing is, she has a very involved family.
That's the side I was going to get to. So I am prefacing this. I am not saying you should be doing this. This is not what you should do. I think a 14-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy could start a family and raise very well balanced children that succeed in their older age. Today?
Yeah.
In any?
Yeah. Yes. I believe. What's that?
Where they getting money from to raise these children?
Well, that's where the family structure comes in. Because many of the times when such things happen, that 16-year-old boy goes to work for his in-law or his dad or his big brother or his sister's big brother, and he's a junior something in whatever their entrepreneurial side of things are. Let's say her family are carpenters. He goes and starts apprenticeship under his in-law. And starts there. Now, understand what I'm saying here. I am not saying this is an ideal. I am not saying anyone should do this. I am saying I see this as being easily possible also. Now, it is going to be more difficult, and I will not advise it. And if I have a son, I will not want him to have a child at that age. If I have a daughter, I certainly will not want her to have a child at that age. I think it would make their life more difficult. But if you're asking, is it possible for them to raise a well-adjusted, well-balanced child? I think it is very much so. Making children is totally out of step. Now, here's the thing. I might tell you what you need to do is go and look at some studies of older parents and younger parents and see some of the differences. And some of the differences might actually surprise you, where the risk-taking of younger parents actually works out to raise more balanced, well-balanced children than the over-concerned neuroticism of older parents. And I've heard a psychologist say this, that to some extent he thinks that maybe you need that kind of replaceability thinking when you're raising children to raise them properly. As in, a young parent understands, I could have another one in a sense, while older parents tend to cherish their child as this is the only one I could ever have, so you have to treat them a certain way. As a teacher, you see the difference in older parents and younger parents. And the older version isn't necessarily a better thing. This is not to say 14-year-olds and 18-year-olds should have children.
I think that is struggling with that generational thing of children having children, and it has resulted in, from my perspective, having an effect on crime and that sort of thing. So it could go horribly wrong, is what I'm trying to say,
But
I would disagree.
Just
Sorry.
before you run in there, before you jump in there, Ronnie, I think a lot of that is cultural, because here's a reality, and there's some controversy about this bringing the news too. There are some children that made children in Hindu households, and their children never grew up to be any criminals. But there are some children who made children in Betham and Silats, and their children are criminals. And it's not just about the children making children, it's the general culture surrounding them.
But how you break that cycle? How do you break that cycle when it is you're perpetuating it through generations by children having children? So you end up with a grandmother who's probably around 30 who don't know any better. So what she's passing on to those children is what she learned, which was the same thing, and then you end up in a situation where you have a neighborhood of people who engage in criminal activity.
Correct. And I think then the problem isn't age related. The problem isn't that the grandmother at 30 couldn't acquire enough information and knowledge. It's the grandmother at 30 acquired the wrong information and knowledge. So she's teaching some horrible stuff. Now, how do you change the culture is the $1 million question. If I knew an easy answer to that, I may have ruled the world. I think cultural changes by and large happen most often on a religious level. If you're looking to change people's hearts, you have to try and kind of change their core. So that's where I'll go on that. But I don't think that is even age related in that sense, because I just made the point I was making is there are some Hindu cultures where they married young and they made children young and it didn't result in criminals. Ronnie, you were saying something.
There's something that I mentioned. We almost run over it, and it was a critical point.
What's that?
He was speaking about the support system. Let's break it down economically to the support system, right? Then extend it also, then extend it home. So when your child goes to school, is your cousin and wherever, a group of them walking to school and walking home. In those days, if you can't go to the meeting or to the parent or wherever, your sister will go because your sister child in the same school.
Mm-hmm.
If one child get lunch, you could bounce off for the next because it's a group or it's a clan or the whole family moving together. I remember growing up, my grandmother would take care of all her grandchildren. So when my mother gone to work, my mother never pay a babysitter. Because my grandmother for all she can't pay the wrong shit. All the way I walk or bush barefoot. So you created a kind of culture where one, it would be less expensive. Two, ever granny cook, everybody eat. So they depend on the part of growing a child or growing up a child properly, not expending the excessive funds on some of these things that we see as being problematic. But then we are hot girl grannies nowadays. The granny want to go in the fed too, and are not minding no picnic, and make your picnic mind them. So, and then we see where the breaking on happening in parenting, because somewhere the parent the picnic, if the parents will do the grandparents will do it, the man on the street might do it for you and they don't even realize.
Correct. Yeah, Ronnie.
Back to your gosh, only I clap for my remember what I wanted to say. The 14 and the 16-year-old example I was given, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to point out, as you correctly said, in the circumstance of the Hindu marriages of children, young ladies, the key thing there is they only married them.
It was children, eh? Children is the right word.
It was children, sure. But the thing is, the difference in that, I think criminality, we don't go there, they were being married to kind of, I don't want to say responsible families, but they had the family unit. But that's your 14, 16 point. To me, a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old coming together. Sorry, let me age and that age. Because it's something weird.
Yes.
Let me say an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old.
Yes.
I like to go legally. You know what YouTube taking you down. At 18 and a 20-year-old, they decide, you know what, we're going to have children. Firstly, I believe that they should get married because I believe marriage is the answer. Secondly, when they are that young, they don't have much set ways, right? So it kind of makes the joining of both of them a little easier.
Correct.
Because they don't have like I accustomed after work, I go in after work on Friday, I go in and line with my boys every Friday as well. And my boys are not come, he wanted to talk about Friday night is date night and all kind of thing, he don't have that because he never had it, and she don't have the, I don't know, women, but that kind of...
You don't know 16-year-olds these days, boy. 16-year-olds have boys nights and going out and like,
Well, and about that, a young person leaving from the parents' house, going into the marital house, right? Because I know some parents will slack, but I think in most cases, parents just kind of have the children and you did not know work nothing out in school. So after school, you go and drink some water. Even though I know always be drinking, or the school children be drinking, but yeah, it kind of, you're going from under your parents straight into your marriage. I believe that kind of helps in terms of meshing better, right? I think that young people could do it. I believe we have such low expectations for young people, except for all the wrong things, because we believe that young people are old enough to know how to do this, that, and the other, but they're not old enough to know how to do something else, and I think that's wrong. I think, especially with guidance of parents make the difference, especially when you have two married parents. I mean, they don't have to be legally married, but two committed parents in raising a child. I think that makes people have a difference. It changes the people that the child may be inclined to line with, to hang with, to date, to procreate with, because the parents kind of set the roadmap for that child. Whereas a child who comes from like a single parent household, you could tell there's a difference in that child. And I think that honestly, in my humble opinion, children who come from two-parent households should not be children who come from single-parent households. It really messes things up.
I disagree with your full 100.
No.
When you say
I grew up single parent, listen to me, I grew up single parent, and sometimes I see the side effects in my own self of growing up in a single parent household. However, there was when I lie more around actual men who grew up with wives and grew up differently, there is an I just see the difference in myself and I begin to self-correct. So once you have the eyes and you begin to look for certain things, sometimes they would say certain things, but why you move this one is like, yeah, you're only trying to, and they begin to see. So what I think, listen to me,
the rule, but that is not the rule.
But that don't mean, listen to me, that don't mean I can't make the difference. Why can't I not be the change? Why can't I not marry up a proper relationship and live and go and do things different? Why can't I not stop it?
Yeah, exactly. You have been changed, but if you look, most times, most cases, boys, especially young men who come from single parent household and young women who come from single parent household tend to not be as wholesome.
Not all two parent households.
Yeah, man. Ronnie, if it's one thing, Ronnie is jumping in it. If it's one, you do back from saying it, Ronnie.
Again, the exception is not the rule, because they have children who come from parent houses and they are not wholesome either. But they would be the exception in most cases.
I don't know if it's the exception.
It's not the exception.
Here's the thing, Here what I think. This is my view on what you say there, Ronnie. I think
my statistics, people who come in from single parent household usually land in a lot more trouble than people who come from.
that is true, and there is some truth to that. But let me tell you how I think those things should bear out in reality. I think your parents should be involved in your choices a lot more. I'm not saying arranged marriages, but your parents should be involved in your choices much more. And what you tend to see with parents involved is your parents may tell you something like that. You don't need to go and write it on your public dating status that me coming from a wholesome two-parent household, I have as off limits any single parent daughter. I'm not saying that, but very often you have your parents involved and they ask, who is the person's mother? who is the person's father? Are they together? Because they're interested in certain factors like that, and they may help you to flesh out certain things like that. Now, I will not say as a hard and fast rule that if you're from a two-parent household, you should not go with someone from a single-parent household. I will not hold to that view, but I do hold to the view that people with seriously conflicting cultures, if they do get married, it is going to create some complications.
Now today, the culture is very important because that is where the clashes will happen. And with respect to what you were saying, because I'm leaving in a bit, in terms of the Hindu households and all that, you're watching their movies.
Yes.
How those parents behave.
Yes.
When they want to bring a child in-law in the house that don't meet the standards.
Yes.
And you see how the children respond.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they have to follow what the parents say.
Otherwise, a slap passing.
And sometimes arranged marriages end up exactly. And sometimes arranged marriages work out because parents can see the value in
Correct.
joining families and joining people of this. The Bible talks about it equally yoked. It's not just about your heart in terms of, yeah, I love this person because of hormones or whatever, but because of lasting foundational things that young people may not always see.
And that's what.
And love comes in after.
That's why I think I really like the arranged marriage general system with the input of the child, obviously. But like, if you're thinking about this realistically, do you expect your early 20-year-old to have as much experience in life and what to look for than their parents who may be double their age at least? I don't think so. And you know, when we're talking about the family and the extended family, and I use the Indian example because we're in Trinidad, and this is the examples we are familiar with in Trinidad. And you look at some of those, the Indian culture in general, and you look even on the side of the males, where the example I was talking about with the 14 and 16, that's something you regularly see. Someone marries into a family and they get a job from inside the family, and that's a cultural thing you see very regularly. And people sometimes they're worried about, okay, how you're going to do the provision part starting from so young. Well, because you all aren't living in that family unit kind of style anyway. If you're in a family unit style, you think for, you know, how many of us like to talk about the 1%ers. The 1%ers, by and large, once they reach of age, you think they're struggling and wondering where to get a job because they're going to a job in one of their family's businesses. And that's how many cultures have done it through time. Instead of you trying to always cut and reset and recreate something from the age of 20 every time, you join into the family that has already been there perpetuating.
And even when you marry, you get to stay with the family.
Yes.
With them until you build, and then you move out on your own. You know, it's just we young people nowadays, we don't want to live with in-laws, so we want to jump out early and not have that support of the family units.
That good. So when I build my rental properties, I'll owe rent.
You can have a question here, right?
Yeah, positive.
I think somebody go up single parent with a mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, your parents involved, I agree, is all well and good. I usually do it. But sometimes the mothers can see these young ladies that come to take away their son or their picnic. How do you treat with that level of involvement? Because it does create some tension. And then when I stand up as a man and say, that is what I wanted to tell you, to play man in my house, I go bust up your mouth.
There is a toxic kind of mother. The word is slipping me. And
Complex on steroids.
what the general idea, the narrative story that talks about it is the Hansel and Gretel, the Wicked Witch in the Woods. That's a placeholder for that type of mother. The word is just slipping me. I believe Freud spoke about this also. And the idea there is that the mother cares so much for their child that they attempt to feed them and fatten them for their own killing in the long run, where they do not want the child to escape from their grasp. They want to continually feed them and fatten them for their own benefit. The good mother by nature fails. That's the narrative of that. A good mother by nature has to fail. They cannot protect their child from everything. You have to give up that kind of mothering vibe that you know you're yearning for from the very fiber of your being. So it's difficult for mothers to do that. And I think personally, when mothers are on their own without a father to tell them generally, oh gosh, woman, leave the boy alone now. You see some more of that difficulty in letting one. I think that's why ideally you don't want those situations.
I would disagree a little bit because that is just, I said it earlier, that is mothers and sons. Whether in a single parent or whether in a two-parent household, we all have the same problems with mothers and sons.
But Michelle, I think I agree. The tendency is there, but it doesn't happen the same with fathers in the household. My mother had 3 sons. My mother loves her sons, but she could only pick up my father's clothes and give us to wear so much before he say, no, you can't get them boys my clothes, I need my clothes. You understand, there's a balance of that. If a mother is there on her own without the male, less emotive, less empathetic balance, I think it's more likely that you see some of that expressing itself out there. While if you have the balance, you're more likely to get someone to counterbalance that urge to input a little too much affection.
I don't know if it's maybe a culture thing, because I know East Indian mother-son relationships are very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
In terms of they're very close with their sons, and daughters-in-law are held to an extremely high standard.
You're speaking from experience, Michelle?
From listening to clients.
But yes, I have heard that.
And it is ridiculous, an observation. Watching colleagues, family members. Tell me any girl who did not have problems with their mother-in-law. Show me somebody.
My wife?
Your wife is blessed. And one of the very rare few. Right? Very rare few.
And as we were talking about the cultural problems, the how we brought up the Indian culture in the first place was juxtaposing it with what we know to be a culture in some of the hotspots in Trinidad. But the Indo culture, although there are benefits, there are disadvantages. There's a reason in India there was is a serious problem with femicide, where they are murdering their baby girls because the culture has placed an inordinate amount of value on boy children over girl children. So yeah, you get that, and that is a fact. Sometimes in the treatment you see that as a daughter, if you grew up in certain households and you're the daughter and you have a bigger brother, you basically grew up as a maid. You grew up as a servant in waiting for your brother. And yes, that is true, and I think that's a toxic thing. I don't think it actually helps. It hinders in the long run, and it doesn't create for a pleasant upbringing for a sister in a situation like that. So yeah, I agree. There is some of that. So for me it was all boys though, so
I mean, hence the need for the feminist movement, right? That's why feminism came about.
So to bring it back, Riyadh, yeah, because that was one of the ways women were able to step out of some traditional roles.
But the irony to me, just to jump in on that with the feminism, the irony to me is feminism pushes the idea that women
and raise those children in a safe environment, or be able to take care of those children. They will choose not to have those children rather than subject them to the reality that they probably experienced. So you have to change the culture.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I find, this is my finding, and this is why sometimes the conclusions drawn by even feminism, and the modern male movements too sometimes, where it seems like they attempt to pit the genders against each other, as a consequence of the results we're seeing happening because of the changes we made, and blaming as it will only the males for what the males have done and the females for what the females have done. Something Michelle was saying there, lining up with this very same thing. I think many times some of the toxic traits we see in the opposite gender was created by their parent of the opposite gender sometimes. So sometimes some of the most toxic men were trained that way by mothers, ironically enough.
Yeah, we are creatures of from our parents. You know, they teach us, they give us, like, a lot of people say that they grew up to not be like their parents, right? And then they end up having the same traits. It's most cases, like in the most extreme cases, like abusers. If you look back, in the past, they were abused at some point. You know, that's what that tends to happen. So, like in most cases, you have to be the one to not do that. You have to be the one to break the cycle.
We call that the victim as predator, where you become the predator when you were the victim before. And in order to change that, it requires a high level of self-awareness and conscious efforts to recognize that behavior and stop it in its tracks before it grows into something more. And unfortunately, I think as a society of Trinidad, we don't even like to read, much less try to be self-aware. So we just perpetuate the cycles over and over. You asked Priya earlier about culture. How to change your culture? It is, I don't even know how that is possible. Sometimes I watch Trinidad and I just wonder, how did we get this bad? And if we could even go back into, you know, the long time days where communities used to help raise kids and men were men and women were women. But I think we're long past that. So I think right now, and it's just my closing because I'm leaving, we just have to do our best in our individual spaces. If you decide to have children, spend time with them. Speak with them. Do not speak at them. Listen to what they say. All right, treat accordingly. This licks, I'm not a big proponent of it. There's a next topic for next time. And, you know, try to raise decent human beings and everything else will follow.
I agree.
That's my 2 cents, right?
I agree.
Thanks so much.
Good night, Michelle. I agree with everything you said there. You must listen. You must take time. I wonder if it's at all possible to change cultures too, and that's why in times of old, when one civilization conquered another, you know what they did? Because it was so hard to change cultures. If you really wanted to conquer another civilization, you come in and you wipe out everybody, every adult, and start back over with maybe the children under 5, because it's very hard to change people's culture once it's already inbuilt. That's how Total War was done generally in times gone by. You want to really get these people out, you have to wipe them out. If you don't, eventually they will rebel against you, or their children will rebel against you, or their children's children will rebel against you, because the culture remains and perpetuates itself there. Changing culture is an extremely difficult thing to do, and the part about self-awareness to avoid those cycles of victimhood too, 100%. I regularly watch things like that. I like to observe as I go about life, and you see some people grow up with an alcoholic father and they swear they will never do something like that. But if you are not self-aware enough, you see, decisions like becoming something negative in life, that's not one decision you make on one fateful day when you have a week to prepare before you say that decision. There are tiny decisions that you're making every day, slowly leading you down a certain path, and it's much more difficult to every single day not make the small decisions that send you in a certain direction. That's a much harder thing to keep in control of, because many people, when they're thinking about being an alcoholic, so my dad was an alcoholic, he beat my mother and he abused my family growing up, I will never do something like that. And you think like doing something like that is someday when you are 30, you come home and the decision confronts you. Do you, Nathan Springer, on this day of your 30th year, want to sign this contract to go on all the rest of days being a degenerate alcoholic alcoholic, and you decide, no, I'm not going to sign that contract, so I will not be an alcoholic. No, it doesn't work like that. It works like, okay, you took a sip at 14 and you didn't like it, but you forced yourself, it was peer pressure. And then by the time you're 18, you are a regular beer drinker and you were sneaking drinking. And then by the time you're 21, you were regularly drunk all about the place. You're comfortable in being drunk. Your drunkenness is a normal state now. Then you happen to find a woman, and by the time you're 30, you're already a drunk. All it needs now is the abuse and a trigger to do that. The stress happens when family comes, and bam, you're in the same position, wondering, how did I end up here? Lack of self-awareness and thinking that this decision is one big decision. It's a million tiny decisions that you made along the way. Two children can come from same home, same parenting, same environment, and become two different people. 100% true. You agree that government sort of encourages bad culture? I agree with that. Two, social media today has a very negative impact on the youth today. I agree. But then as a parent, you're supposed to control when your child ends up on social media. I think maybe children under the age of 18 should not be on social media. Queenish says, as an adult, you start to take responsibility for your actions and mind. You know what's the unfortunate thing in life? As an adult, you start to take responsibility, yeah. But even at 16, your actions already have lifelong consequences. When I talk to young people, one of the things I always like to press into younger people's minds is, do not go making permanent mistakes in your life at this young age. There are certain things you could do at 18 that are going to drag along with you for the rest of your life. No matter what you do, it's going to follow you around. You try your best not to get yourself involved in those kind of permanent decisions to follow you around at a young age. That's probably one of the most important advice probably you could give to some of them. So, to young people, don't make those permanent decisions. What's that?
I'm not gonna jump in and say give me the chance one time too. The challenges I've observed. But you can know that while I was absent from the life, some of your new followers probably not accustomed to the voice. But one of the things I've learned from being around a lot of young men, single parent women in particular, is the issue of taking responsibility is a big challenge for them. Because whenever they get the opportunity to, even if it means allowing them to make mistakes, a lot of them don't want to allow them to make mistakes to learn at the small level. And a lot of men on a whole across this island in particular, young men having that challenge. So go ahead and do that. All right, no problem. By the time you go to execute, you realize they don't do it for you already, or they change something in the process, or instead of you going to get it for yourself, they don't look at the cord to pull a string for you. So like them, they never allow you to practice being responsible. They never allow you to practice being a man, basically. And then all of a sudden, you must just marry, get into a relationship, and poof, become the best husband or the best man ever. So sometimes you don't allow learning opportunities, you don't allow opportunities for young men to make mistakes, but still then I realize, okay, this do work, or that might do. Oh, I talk to you of this time, so I need to change my tone next round. Oh, I naturally have a deep voice, so I must speak a little more smoother, a little more nicer. So these are things we have to learn before you get into marriage, allow serious relationships. And sometimes the parents don't give you the room to do that. And
you know, positive radiation, something that I read. I like reading social studies, psychological studies, sociology studies, and most of those studies are right there on the internet. And if you follow the right publications, they'll just pop up in front of you. And, hey, this is an interesting thing. And on that note, a female. What was she? Sociologist, social scientist, something she was. She was doing a study and they were researching and she was talking about that. And she was saying one of the things that we have lost in modern times are the male-only spaces. And in cultures of old, nearly every single culture, in becoming a man, in that crossover from boy to man, one of the things that nearly all males had were male-only spaces where you functioned and exercised your life with only men around you. And some of what you're talking about there, the ability to make a mistake, to leave you to make a mistake, I think some of that happens mostly in some of those male-only spaces. Listen, you go in with some senior men as a neophyte, as a young novice in something, they're going to enjoy leaving you to make mistakes oftentimes. That's how men generally operate. So what you're talking about there may be a lack of places for maturity in society. That may be something that we're lacking and is necessary. Anyway, people, we're coming in for a close. Ronnie, you could hit your closing statement while you're talking there. Give us what you're saying in closing one time.
As I was saying, male only spaces. Somebody had brought it up in the chat long time where they said, young boys, are being neglected, and I couldn't help but notice. I have a cousin. She has an all-female group. She kind of like interacts with girls. Let me see, 16 or whatever. I saw it had a next one on TV advertising some girl group, and I was talking about how people should talk to you and how you should interact and and there's literally not one. I probably it might have one male group. One.
I actually know a few, so you need to get in contact with me. I actually know a few.
I'm not a male. I don't need to get in contact with you. I don't know no males. You understand? I don't want to come in your space. You know me. I don't know no man. The only man I know is Olia on here. I'm a female working in a mostly female environment. I don't live with no man, so I love to me. You can come and advertise on the live too. But I don't really know any male spaces. Most times it is especially the ones that get all the sponsorship and all the publicity is always the women group. The International Women Day is woman, this. And you hardly see any kind of program for men to go to. Yes, I know the ministry had one to the men in Tobago, and they had some in Trinidad or whatever, but that's literally only one or two programs. I don't know much. I don't know any personally ones, like no NGOs that do mail. So Nathan, I'm begging you. I don't know if
I'm interested. I mean, don't worry. Things are in the works. We'll see how that goes. But
yes.
I do think
by
a manful. So instead of mindful, we do manful.
A mindful duty to sponsor the male space of mindfulness. I don't know if that makes sense.
Somebody asked up there if I think, do you agree that social media or technology creates a breakdown in human relations and empathy? Yes, I agree because it changes how humans interact with each other and how we feel things. So the idea of, I always remember one of the first times a dead body was shown on a newspaper in Trinidad and Tobago. That created news, that created waves. I remember when Ian Allen started showing dead bodies across the media. That was a big issue. Now you're scrolling through social media and you're seeing guts all about, a brain blown out here. That in and of itself has already changed how people view things. Yeah, Ronnie, let me hear your last point there.
You go on, sir. You want to speak, Riyadh?
No, go ahead, finish what you have to say.
Sorry, one last thing about technology and youth. I believe children now are suffering with a lot of mental illness because of screen time. My cousin, her first words weren't even English. It was Chinese, I believe, or Japanese or something like that, because she was watching a lot, or Korean, could be Korean, because she was watching a lot of those YouTube videos. So I think screen time is very, very, very bad for children. If you have them, stop giving them screens.
Who knows, she might turn out to be bilingual and she'll be able to get a job doing some kind of working at UN or something like that. I don't know how beneficial that is to the world right now. But I digress. With regards to men, I mean, we always had traditional spaces where men could be men. I mean, and most of them lean towards sports. You have football groups, you have cricket. I personally did cricket growing up. I did karate, I did all of those things, and you have like Cub Scouts, etc. But we could always do it more spaces, but it needs men to have interest in giving guidance and leadership, and direction to the future generations. And we need more of that. But we shouldn't look at women who are doing that for other women and see that as a bad thing. Instead, men should look at it and say, okay, no, we need to be getting to that level. We should see it as we need to get to that level and do the same thing for men as well. So that's all I'd like to say. I would also like to say it would be nice to make it easier for people to have kids. We need to work on the financial aspect of it. It's tough out there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but yeah, nice conversation, guys.
Yeah, man. Always a pleasure. Anything to say in closing there, Positive?
I still had a final word, I know a few of the groups in the Tobago space have an idea, so some of them, or some of the individuals, one who does normally promote and push that kind of vibes. I only don't know because I don't feel I make it. I don't feel that I have such a strong influence. And one of my fear is when I become an influencer, we live in a very unforgiving society. So I don't want to do it and then something happen to me and then people call me and they stink me. So that's kind of why I in the background. But I could guide you to some of these groups and some of these places. Scouts, cadets, infiltrated, don't even waste your time. You would see them on some of these programs that you can see who are the leaders there. The women are in charge of scouts and all of them things now. I could tell you, I spent 10 years as a Boy Scout. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. And then they're not economically viable for these corporate entities to push meal-based events. And then men don't show up for men. If for me to really be who I am and be open and vulnerable, it could be to my partners and them. And to come on air with on public like this and be so open and so vulnerable. If you cannot put yourself at risk in our culture. But I have been a part of a number of sessions. I have done international forums and things too. Some of them issues I have never been 100% vulnerable due to our culture and our society. But fellas support one another. I'm not too sure when I'll see me again. I'll just be busy these days. But yeah, vibe still.
Yeah, man. You're saying that, and I think some of that could be in the differences between men and women, just in their general nature. Women are generally more collectivist. Women are better at being social creatures. Females in nearly all species are usually the more social of the gender. Women in humans are significantly, generally speaking, more social than men. And what that could cause is that many of those male-only species would be more organic in their creation. So if the male-only space doesn't organically form, it's not very easy to astroturf a male space. So you could create a girls empowerment group, call it Girls for Us, GFU, Girls for Us, and going to schools, and a lot of girls are going to come, and you're talking enough and get a right woman to come, and somebody might come and break down and cry and share their close stuff, and it works well. You do the same thing for men, create the Boys Empowerment for Us, and carry that out into the school, and fellas kind of watching it suspiciously and like, what going on there, Boys Empowerment? They are batty man thing, or you are man come and just talk about feelings. Who is the boss there? Who is that man? Why you want to talk to us as a little boys for? Kind of funny, man. See, because it isn't organic. So however, if somehow you get into some of those more organic male species, where like Riyadh spoke about the football, the cricket, some of those spaces that men create because that's where they want to be, and then you attempt to get some action involved there, it might surprise you how open some men would be. You speak to some men in the right organic male-only spaces, and what they would open up to you about, it may surprise you. Just bear in mind the narrative that all men just hate their children and don't want to take care. A lot of that are lies told to us in modernist thinking. They're not true. Many men, they are just as caring and feeling as many women when they are able to express it. So my son goes CIC, and the amount of group meal spaces, well, yeah, it's a boys' school, so you'd expect a lot of group meal spaces, but that's not exactly what I was speaking about in terms of coming of age spaces. But yes, that's still a good thing, and that's why to me there's a significant benefit in even sending your boys to some of those single-sex schools. There's still even a benefit to that. Many of those boys come out, strangely enough, sometimes better balanced than some of the boys who went to co-ed schools. Strangely enough. Anyway, people, anyway, it's been a while. We've talked for a while. It was nice as per usual. This has been the Thursday Talks Mindful Live. What about men who prefer to participate in softer spaces and are being judged? Well, good for those men. Those men can do that. About being judged, I guess it might be according to what that softer space might be, but I think in the modern context, many of those softer spaces don't carry the same judgment that they once did. You could get into some of those softer spaces. Anyway, I hope you guys were educated, informed, or entertained. I will be here again for the next Mindful Live tomorrow evening, starting around that 9 p.m. time. Till then, people, hold it down. Be well, and I will see you all later. Bye. Good night, Divine Blue. Peace.